evening, everyone. Tyler Dunn at Go Long, joined by the phenomenal Zach Jackson of The Athletic. He covers the Cleveland Browns. Also, the host of Zach Jackson and Friends, an excellent podcast. Zach, I was actually listening to you mowing that lawn behind me the other day. So thanks for helping me pass the time. How the hell you been?
You look good, man. You look like you've been getting 2.5 hours of sleep and you're ready to roll here for some football.
It's wild. It is like night to night. Rocco, our third, he had a good night last night, though. Just woke up twice. Me and Gina are working in shifts, right? It's just like a coach planning for training camp practice. You gotta have every window, every half hour accounted for. If you have a plan, then you're going to be good. You can survive the night. Are the Browns prepared for training camp themselves at the quarterback position?
Yeah, I think they are at the quarterback position. I think the Judkins thing is the major curveball and just the kind they didn't want when you're looking for good vibes. So, training camp's training camp time. Much of it is unpredictable. A lot of it is scripted. So those things conflict. They crash all the time, right? The Browns are hoping and counting on a hungry, pissed off, motivated team to show up. Basically the opposite of what they had last year when they had this quarterback who was just designated the leader and couldn't complete a pass. And they had a bunch of guys who had fat contracts. They had just won 11 games, right? And they just went through the motions. It was the least competitive training camp I've ever seen. So, I do think Kevin Stefanski is generally good at the details. I do think just from getting the vibe of the spring, the guys are pissed off. The guys are hungry to show, and they should be. There's fewer guys that have these big fat contracts. There's fewer long-term answers here, right? So, somebody used the word fascinating to me way back in February, and I kind of chuckled and said I would probably use another F word to describe the Browns. But here we are, as we record this, we're like 27 hours from seeing the first practice. I do think it's fascinating because I do think the quarterback thing can go a number of different ways. And I don't think this is a playoff team. I don't think this is a team that's coming through Baltimore or Buffalo in January. But I don't think this necessarily has to be a 3-win team. I don't think this has to be a bottom 5 team in the league. Might it be? Sure. Are there major questions at important positions? Sure. But this could go a number of different ways, and I'm just sort of along for the ride.
I think we're seeing the team through the same lens, Zach. That's refreshing to hear because, I was just parachuting in and hanging out with Grant Delpit a little bit, talking to his coaches at the college level, the pro level, and he really does want to be that voice that kind of leads that charge of, wins, losses. This isn't a team that's going to be competing for a Super Bowl anytime soon. But if you look back at like Buffalo, Detroit, Cincinnati, these teams that were putrid for a long, long time. Yeah, they found the quarterback, don't get me wrong, but you can pinpoint this big bang moment where the Bills ended the drought before they even drafted Josh Allen. The Lions, they were 4-19-1 under Dan Campbell to start, turned it on, won that game at Lambeau Field to close that 2022 regular season. It was like their Super Bowl. And even Cincinnati, when Joe Burrow is on IR, they're 2-10-1. I'm sure you remember this game Monday night. Juju Smith-Schuster's dancing his ass off on the logo, TikToking, and it pissed the Bengals off. Von Bell lights his ass up, forced fumble. Those players kind of point to that moment as a turning point for the franchise. So I asked Grant, is it one of those moments that can kind of turn this thing around? He agreed, but he did say a lot of it is just how they work, to your point, being hungry, showing up hungry day in, day out, working. I think you're going to get a sense for the Cleveland Browns right in training camp, right? You remember what it looked like, lethargic, getting pushed around by the Vikings in those joint practices. If the energy is different, that's just going to be a good sign for the soul of the team, I would think.
Yeah, so this is the first time under Stefanski that they've done 2 joint practices, right? And I think in both of the last couple summers, they've been at the exact same time, part of the script as we talked about. And the first one 2 years ago went well for the first day in Philly, and then the next day it didn't. And last year it didn't go well for either day, and that kind of set a bad tone. So I'm interested, because Kevin doesn't give us many straight answers. I'm interested if doing 2 just happened, or it's okay, hey, we're going to push. We're going to find out. And whatever happens in that first one, it's just one practice against Carolina in basically the 3rd week of camp. Is it going to dictate? Our job's going to change, right? Our role's going to change that day. Are we going to say, hey, we're not here to fight, we're not here to do this, but we're really maybe secretly not that pissed off if there's a cheap shot or something like that, right? So right. I'm interested. That talking about that moment, I feel like maybe that moment was December 23 and the Browns just didn't build on it, right? But that's why Joe Flacco is back here, let's be honest. He brings the cachet. And I do, if there's one thing I'm sure of in training camp these next 4 weeks, it's that if a guy runs the wrong route or doesn't run a route the right way or something like that, that Joe Flacco is going to get in that guy's ass, right? And it might not be what we see. It might be in the meeting room when Joe Flacco says, we have to do this because this
Yeah.
guy's seen it all and he's done it all. And he came here and he was the first quarterback in the history of the Browns, the whole franchise, to throw for 300 yards in 4 straight games. And guess what? Guys liked him. Guys loved him. Guys respected him. Guys wanted to play for him. So I don't know if he's going to be the starter. I don't know how they're going to handle any of this, right? I have a pretty good guess on the first 3 days, but that's it. But I just think that those little things have to happen. The human element has to be locked in of guys understanding, hey, there's urgency here, and we should be really mad about how things have gone since that December 2023.
Absolutely want to dive into everything quarterbacks and try to parse through this unique quarterback room. First, though, I was chatting with somebody in that Browns front office, and he emphasized the need for getting guys who, when they get punched in the mouth, they know how to respond. And he's like, this is a rough schedule. Like they're just hoping by week 7 they figure out who's with us, who's not with us. Kind of what
Yeah.
Grant Delpit said before that last game of last season. He's like, we're gonna find out who the hell we're riding with in 2025. They have to kind of weed through and have some attrition here. Weed out the weak. But looking at their moves in free agency, Zach, the draft, and knowing what you do about the personalities of these players, do you think they have just hardened players who, when they get punched, they're not just going to cower? I mean, this team was outscored by 177 points last year,
Yeah.
which since '99 the Browns have been mostly a train wreck. I think that was like the third highest that they've allowed even since
Yes.
then. So it
Yes.
was really bad. You need to just rewire the DNA of this team. All these players they brought in, what do you make of it?
Well, I would start with who's here, and I would start with the offensive line. Now, the four most established and best, they're all only under contract for this year, right? So that should be some motivation. And when you talk about Kevin Stefanski's preferred style of offense with Wyatt Teller's strengths, with Joel Bitonio's strengths, Ethan Pochik, Jack Conklin, I mean, these guys should be hungry, whether it's another contract or just not finishing their careers on a down. We don't know where any of this is going to go. Joel might not play after this year. Joel might or might not go to Canton. He does not want to go out the way he went, right? And yes, that number is one of many superlatives, or I guess the opposite of superlatives, just outrageous numbers that stick out from last year. They weren't even trying to win at the end of the year. Let's be honest. You're not trotting Bailey Zappi and DTR out there if you're trying to win. They were shaping for a future that they probably hoped would include Cam Ward, right? It didn't
Yeah.
work out that way. They made the trade for the future, probably because they thought that was best for the future and their future. But I don't think it was necessarily the worst thing for right now anyway. So, this team has to be good in the trenches. It has to be much better in the turnover department. And the defense has to be disruptive. And internally, they'll tell you that the offense was so bad for so much of last year that the defense didn't have a full chance to do what it does, right? So any defense that has Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward has a damn good start, right? We're talking about elite players. In the linebacking core, you lost your best linebacker in JOK. I'm not sure he's ever going to play again, but you have a bunch of guys on a 1-year deals and a second-round pick in Carson Schlesinger who brings a physicality they think is a real fit there. Guys playing for a lot in their careers at different stages, and we'll see. If you just follow the lead of Myles and Denzel and they play like they've almost always played, then you have at least a good defense. And if you have to have a great one to get to a certain number of wins, even if that's just more than a handful of wins, then I think they have the pieces to do that. But the offensive line has to stay healthy. They have to run the ball. That's why this Judkins thing is such a big deal. And there's going to be times that the defense has to be better than just good, I think, to win them games. And that stands for everybody to an extent, right? But,
Mhm.
I don't know. Along the way, much more likely to see 17-16 games than 35-34 games.
And I don't know about you, Zach. Like the older I get covering pro football, I kind of change what I think is the best way to build a team. Like early on, I'm just like, you know what? If you stink, just own it. Like stink as much as you can stink. Reek. Like embrace the rotten and just get the picks. Try to rebuild in every conceivable way to get that Joe Burrow transcendent figure at quarterback. And I don't
Right.
know, like the more you're around, you realize like that it's hard to fumigate that building once you're a Hugh Jackson Browns team winning one game in 2 years. Like that takes a long time to get that stink out. And there's a guy with the Eagles front office who told me like that's a mistake a lot of young GMs make. You think, okay, all these 22 and 23-year-olds are going to play and it's going to be a good thing, but you need like a baseline of veteran talent so they're not developing bad habits, right? And
Right.
they can kind of get really good at maybe one thing and focus on that one thing and grow from there. Think about like Jalen Hurts early in his career, what he was to what he's become. So I don't know. At first, when I saw that Miles Garrett deal go down, I'm like, what in the hell are the Browns thinking here? Like,
Hmm.
get your
Yeah.
picks. There's so many
Right.
teams out there that would have given you whatever you want for him. Then you really look at it, okay. Like Julius Peppers played forever. You can still get some prime years out of Miles Garrett. It's 40 million a year. That's a lot of money. But keeping a future Hall of Famer as a general rule of thumb is a good thing in the present and the future. Like, what was your
Yeah.
take on how that went down?
Yeah, my thought's the exact same of yours, and that's probably the very first thing I wrote last offseason once the smoke cleared on like getting rid of Ken Dorsey and just the general end of season stuff. But what they said in front of the mic and off of it to me is like, we weren't trading Miles Garrett. Like this guy is that good, and in no way do we get better by moving on from Miles Garrett. So they dug in, they won that part of it, right? But yeah, he's going to be 30 this December. He's still playing at a very high level. He has rarely missed games. He's had things to manage. They all do, but they just look at what he does, and it's not just the sack numbers. It's the way he changes the blocking schemes. It's the way he speeds up not just the quarterbacks but the play callers. It's the way he has to be accounted for in all these times. And they've had some swings and misses in building the room around him. I think it's probably a pretty good room. It might be a really good room. I don't know, but Clowney worked for a while. It didn't. They were stupid enough to take on Clowney for a second year. There's a reason he's only in place for 1 year at a time, right? They've drafted some defensive tackles that have worked for a while, some that haven't. 2 years ago, when they were phenomenal, Dalvin Tomlinson was phenomenal, and that let the edge guys do a lot of work. Last year, Dalvin Tomlinson was never healthy. He's no longer on the team, right? They draft Mike Hall last year to be a pass rusher, gets arrested in August, doesn't get out to the practice field until October, gets hurt at the end of the year. We don't know what he is, right? He's supposed to be in there rushing the passer with Myles Garrett. So, yeah, everybody knows about Miles, and there's no running from it. And so I get it. I think we're going to revisit that, Ty, maybe as
Yeah.
early as this trade deadline, maybe this February. Like, what should they have done? But they were dug in on it, and like I said, I get it. I get it, right?
Yeah.
And even if you just take a step back and say the GM did not want to be the GM who traded for Deshaun Watson and traded away Myles Garrett, right? And that's probably not the best way to operate. And
Yeah.
frankly, I don't know that the best front office in the history of football could recover from this Watson mess, but that's a simple way to explain it. And then you say, oh, by the way, look what Miles does every single week to every single tackle, backup tight end, backup running back, coordinator, quarterback's coach, and quarterback who spends the week preparing for him. They're always looking over their shoulder is where is this guy coming?
The air just smelled fresher down there during OTAs and mini camp, Zach. But Deshaun Watson isn't gone quite yet. They have to deal with this contract.
Yeah.
They've kind of moved on from him from a football sense. Like, how awkward is it right now?
Well, it wasn't in the spring because we're just watching the quarterback competition. And, frankly, I didn't watch a lot of the other guys because you're tracking that stuff. And I am not going to be the person starting tomorrow, Todd, that charts every completion.
Oh,
But I'm going
thank
to chart
God.
every rep. I'm going to chart every rep because I think that's important, right?
Yeah.
And what I would say, I'm sure we'll go into detail on what I think about the two rookies, but they have to be really good in what we see and what we don't see because they have to get chances to play with the starters or at least the backups.
Hmm.
If they're out there with the XFL guys and the undrafted rookies, they're not going to succeed. Like it's just preseason football is not real pretty, right? So they need to do that, and we will see how that goes. But in the preseason, we don't see Miles at all. We won't see much of Batonio, much Denzel Ward. Like there are young guys on this team at nearly every position because they have their starting pass catchers. They got no proven answers beyond it. We have no idea what's going on at running back now. Corners 2 and 3 are both only signed through this year. There's no proven starter next to Grant Delpit at safety. So there's guys, and there's guys who have done it at various levels, but this has to be a training camp where guys emerge, and this has to be a year, regardless of what is in that W column at the end, where young players are coming through. Because right now, if you take out the undrafted rookies, Ty, at this moment, there's only 25 players under contract for 2026. Okay. And of
Ooh,
those
there's a
25,
number.
one's Deshaun Watson at a cap number of 80 million. One is JOK, who's likely to never play again. And a lot of them are just guys, right? So there's room for young players on this team to emerge and do it at a discounted rate and put yourself in the plans and make you think, hey, maybe we're onto something. Because right now, you have to be really optimistic to look past Miles Garrett and Denzel Ward and say, hey, we're onto something.
Now, Zach, that's not how you cover training camp. Don't you know you got to appeal to the lowest common denominator? You chart every completion, and then here's what you do: you provide no context. You just
Right.
jam all those statistics together. I don't care if they're playing versus air. A
Right.
completion is a completion. If Shador is 12 of 13, whether it's me and you out there playing defense, clearly Kevin Stefanski is going to be making his decision based off of those numbers. So, chase the retweets, chase the likes. That's what it's about in this business. I'm surprised that you don't know how it works by now.
I'm trying to learn. This is training camp like 26 for me, so I'm still trying to learn. So that's why I look so damn old as the Browns are in another quarterback competition in
Yeah, that
2020.
would wear on you. But no, thank you. And everybody out there, make sure you read Zach's coverage. Even if you're not a Browns fan, this is going to be a fascinating camp to follow. It's one of the reasons we were down there. So, all right, who starts week one? Let's hear it.
Well, I think it's Joe Flacco. And I say it with a fairly strong level of conviction. But I'm not going to be surprised by anything for a lot of reasons. I'm going to explain the top few to those right now. Is Joe Flacco is 40, right? And Joe Flacco, outside of the four magical games in Cleveland, his last 4 years are not good, right? And so Kenny Pickett has started a lot of games. Kenny Pickett's shining moment in this league is the preseason 2 years ago, right? Kenny Pickett is more mobile than Joe Flacco, and Kenny Pickett's the first guy they took, right? Now, it was just a fifth round pick, and obviously the Eagles were ready to move on, but it was the first day of free agency, and the Browns starting with not a completely blank slate because of Watson's contract, but almost a totally blank slate, put him in there first, right? So they talked to Joe. They didn't, Joe, it didn't come back around until mid April, about 2 weeks before the draft. But I view it as two different competitions, Ty. I view it as Pickett versus Flacco to realistically be the number one starter, and then obviously ride it as far as that goes. And then I view it as Gabriel versus Sanders to an extent, but mostly Gabriel and Sanders versus being a rookie quarterback, and then just versus everything in terms of trying to put themselves on the initial depth chart, trying to learn the offense, trying to, bounce back quickly from a bad throw or a bad day, trying to handle success. The whole crowd's going to be out there chanting for Shador every single day, right? Like, how do you handle this? How do you string those days together? We'll see. And then when we get to the joint practices and get to the preseason games, have one or both of those guys earned it. So I'm interested to see how Kevin handles the whole thing of competitions, not just quarterback, but other versus getting a team ready. Like, obviously, by the time you go to Philly in mid August, you'd like to have your starter and be focused on that. But I don't know. The spring was like I had never seen. Usually rookie minicamp is just instructional 45-minute practices. This year it was 7-on-7, rip it, because we got to see these quarterbacks compete. They signed four more receivers to their 90-man roster than they normally would because
Wow.
they got to have fresh legs for the quarterbacks to compete, So I'm hearing nothing but good things about all four quarterbacks showing up early, staying late, being good teammates, asking the right questions, showing the right things that they want. Over the next 5 weeks, how does that carry over? How does that translate? What opportunities arise for either guys to get promoted or another team to call or, something? I don't know. I mean, I don't know if Joe Flacco could hold up for 17 games and the Browns were a real playoff contender. I would tell you Joe Flacco is the quarterback. But there's so many ifs and so many variables here that I just want to be clear that I love to be right, and I've been right a time or two, but I am not. I'm not telling you this with a strong, strong level of confidence that Joe Flacco is going to start against the Bengals on September 7th.
Everybody, make sure you listen to Zach's latest podcast too. You power ranked or drafted. I'm sorry, like the most memorable
Yes.
quarterback moments. I totally forgot about your number one, Johnny Manziel,
Uh-huh.
and his rapping on Instagram. They had to put out a statement. Oh my God! I mean, you're gonna have something to write. It's gonna be entertaining. You don't know what to expect. What
Sure.
could Shador do? What could Dylan Gabriel do? What's Kenny Pickett? Who knows? Who the
Right.
hell knows? It's the
Yeah.
Cleveland Browns.
Yeah. I mean, on day one of rookie minicamp, I saw Shador pick up a ball and spin it. And it wasn't even in a drill. It was like between drills, and a ball boy or a coach yelled, pick up that ball, and he threw it. And I thought, man, he's talented. And then for most of the next 3 to 4 weeks, he backed that up. right? And I think everybody agrees. So there are reasons, football and non, that he slipped that far. But like the talent is undeniable in a vacuum. And, and he's
Yeah.
produced, right? Now, the two toughest defenses he played last year were BYU and Nebraska, right? And they got their butts kicked by both of them. And neither of those teams are in the AFC North, right? But the talent there is undeniable. So that's part of what makes it fascinating. Obviously, the Browns like Dylan Gabriel. They used a top 100 draft pick on him, whether regardless of what the outside world or other draft rooms or I think, right? But then they undercut him by drafting another quarterback and changed the whole shape of the offseason. If you really like a rookie quarterback and you have two older guys who are basically backups and only under contract for 1 year, you should probably structure your summer to get that rookie ready. Instead, they've taken away, I don't know, what's the percentage of the reps? Well, we're going to find out over the next few weeks what percentage of the reps they've taken away from Dylan Gabriel or what percentage he can grab back if he's really good.
And it was kind of cooked on both ends for Shador Sanders, obviously, in retrospect. I mean, he was never this top five pick as pushed by
Yeah.
some in the mainstream. And, um, some of the really, really rough stories out there, reporting that's out there, it's real from what I can gather, like
Yeah.
him and Brian Dable clashing. But then you kind of know Dable's personality. I can see why they would butt heads. At the end of the day, though, if the Browns don't take him in the fifth, there's a really good chance he's a seventh rounder or completely undrafted, which is crazy because the talent is there. I mean, we've had David Yost is a longtime college coach. He's been on this show, and I trust his quarterback guy as much as anybody. He's critical. He thinks outside of the box. He had Justin Herbert, Jordan Love, uh, all those Missouri guys over the years. And he loved Shador Sanders. He just thought, like, okay, look at what he was dealing with on the offensive line. Look at what he was dealing with his defense. He had to create. He had to improvise. He had to do a lot of different stuff, and he was accurate as hell. He found a way to make it work. So I keep wondering, like, what are we missing? What's the NFL missing here? I get it. There's all that other stuff. He might be a pain. He might be hashtagging legendary behind him
Yeah.
and be unbelievably entitled. But if the dude can play, it's the most important position in the fifth round. What a
Yeah.
steal for the Cleveland
Yeah.
Browns this moment of time.
Yeah, I don't know this for a fact, Ty, but I got to think they made the trade when they did because I think they believe Philly was going to take him with the very next pick.
Hmm.
That's what I believe. Now, I don't have that verified, right?
Did they go Kyle McCord?
They ended up with Philly
Syracuse's
ended up with
finest?
Kyle McCord. Yes, yes.
No, they were going McCord all the way. Come on now.
Yeah, well, I know
He's
he's a
the
Philly
steal of
guy.
the draft, obviously.
He and Stefanski went to the same high school, so we were kind of tracking that all along, right? But then
Okay.
when they took a quarterback in the third round, we thought, well, they're out of the quarterback derby. Instead, they were back in the quarterback derby, right? So, Shador has never been a backup. 4 years as a high school starter, 4 years in college, right? And like big time producer, that doesn't translate necessarily, but like the accuracy and anticipation, it showed up in the spring. Now, a few of the throws that made their way around the Twitter sphere in the spring were against no rush at all. And that was probably the biggest football knock on him, right? Is that he did not have good mechanics, good fundamentals at all against the blitz. And that's going to happen. And specifically, it's going to happen if he's out there playing with third and fourth teamers in the summer. So we will see, how he handles that. Dylan Gabriel, to me, did not look good in the spring until the last 2 days. And then he did. The last 2 days were his two most impressive by far. So was he just on those days? Or was that some sort of breakthrough that he's going to carry over? I don't know. I saw that Joe Flacco still has the Joe Flacco arm. And I go back to that December 2023 when I would reach out to people in his life and they would say the same thing. This dude was put on earth to throw the football, right? He's not pleased with how he's played or how it's gone at the back end of his career, but he's still in shape. He still wants to play. He could do a million other things. He doesn't need the money. He wants to play football and he wants to play at a high level. And I got to believe that after the first two waves of free agency went and he was unsigned, he chose Cleveland because he thought he could come there and do it, right? And still do it at a high level. He's the only guy that's been in this building. He's the only guy that's done it in this offense. And the results in those games, small sample size, speak for themselves. So we will see how it goes. Does it probably go that Joe plays through mid-October-ish and then it gets wild? Well, yes, but most Brown seasons do that time.
Yeah.
So buckle up along for the ride. But yeah, speaking of the charting and everything without context, I went up to one of the radio guys here at the end of minicamp and I said, I got no problem with what you're doing. And I said, I'm going to tell you the truth that if I had four staffers out there, I probably would do the same. I said, but please just get them right. Just get the numbers right. It's for people to
Oh, okay.
decide about the context, but as long as you get them right, then that's fine. You're not doing a disservice to the rest of us. So, yeah, I was just talking this morning, like I'm picking some stuff up, finishing up my pre-camp checklist. Like, make sure you have a mobile phone charger because you don't know what's going to happen day to day, hour out there, and you can't get caught, not being ready to have something on film or something charted.
I thought you were gonna, tee up a good old fashioned media war. That's what I was hoping for there. That you,
I'm
you and
trying
this
to
radio
avoid
person
those.
throw down.
Ty, I'm trying to avoid those, but look, the Judkins thing is a reminder. Like this could be a not so good season, but a quarterback could emerge, young players could emerge. You could feel better about the direction of the Browns. Or this could be a not so good season where there's player arrests and awful quarterback play and people flying banners over the stadium, sell the team and all that. And that's when it really hits the fan. So
Yeah.
we've seen it all here, not before and after Johnny, and that was 11 years ago. So I'm prepared for anything. But I think that's my key takeaway right now is there's definitely different distinctions of really bad seasons, and I'm open to seeing where this thing goes.
Which, like you said at the start of the spring, you had no idea what was going to happen with these Browns. You're going to take the drama, take the excitement, whatever
Yeah,
comes next. It's a good
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
It's a good thing for Ella here too, for those watching. She's taking in her Cleveland Browns. So, how you doing, sweetie? Before I lose you though, I don't know much at all about Dylan Gabriel. I think outside looking in, small quarterback, AFC North, Cleveland, Ohio.
Yeah.
What are they thinking here? What were they thinking with that pick?
They were thinking he's super accurate. They're thinking he went to three different programs and became the leader instantly. I think he was a backup for one game of his six-year college career, right? So he did this transferring. He embraced the leadership. He embraced learning the offense. He came in and he produced. So they like the quick release. They like the accuracy. I think to an extent we've seen that already. Obviously Oregon's offense is not what you're going to have to run in the AFC North, but he ran it really well. And until they got hit by that truck by Ohio State last year, they were impressive as hell. So that's what they see is they think plus accuracy and plus leadership, and we'll see where it goes.
Yeah.
To be fair, and I've been critical. If Dylan Gabriel's drafted 50 picks later, I'm probably saying, hey, that's a good backup quarterback. He's got the kind of makeup that you want in there, right? It's where they took him after they had done what they done when they made the statement, we're punting on quarterback, we're not taking Travis Hunter, we're getting next year's first round pick, and we're pointing towards the future. To take a quarterback in the top 100 when you look at the state of this roster and you look at the AFC North, like that's where you scratch your head. And then to follow it up by taking the quarterback that you told everybody you weren't taking,
Mm.
and to add this element to it of his popularity and his talent, we'll see.
Objectively, I think it's just good for the NFL if the Cleveland Browns are competent, competitive. I don't know. Like as somebody that's tried to learn more about the history of the game, and thanks so much for having blood and guts right behind you here on the TV broadcast. I know that was organic. You weren't a product placing that. So thank you, Zach. But like working on that and learning about Ozzie Newsome and kind of reliving all of those just brutal Browns moments through the 80s. And even before that, go back to Paul Brown. There's so much we take for granted in the NFL that he originated. I don't know. It's just good for the sport if the Browns are good. And it's been since what night? God, I had it in my story 1989 since they won the division. It's
Yeah,
been
so
a bit.
23 was the first year since 1989 that they finished with a better record than the Steelers.
Woo!
Right. And
Wow.
that's the rival since way back and the closest in proximity and all of that stuff. So yeah, this is no fault of Bernie's, right? Bernie is a legend, was a legend. The Browns cut Bernie when I was in eighth grade, Ty. That was 32 years ago, right? And they haven't really replaced him. So, when you come to training camp or a preseason game, you will see people wearing Bernie t-shirts and Bernie jerseys, right? And again, that's
Yeah.
not Bernie's fault. And God bless Bernie. He's provided us a lot of laughs and as an adult and as a kid, but they have not replaced him in that time, and they've had moments, they've had guys they thought it would be. And then they obviously, went from Baker, who had just become so popular with the fan base, to making the big move. And here they are. People want it. Like Joe Flacco would tell you, he was treated like a king in his time here. He was living in the hotel, right? And
Yeah.
and just people would just and for good reason. So let's see what happens. Like I said, I truly believe that all of these guys bring something to the table, and I truly believe that and it's important that the quarterback room represents what your team to be, what you need your team to be, and that's hungry, that's pissed off, that's let's embrace where we are, and let's roll them out there and see what happens. So that schedule looks daunting. And a simple reason that is those other teams know who their quarterback is, right? So, you know, this team wins 2 games, 4 games, 6 games. I don't know. Maybe more than that. Probably not, but maybe more. I just don't know where it goes. But I don't think it has to be an awful team. And I think that we're going to be glued, starting this week and really all the way through because every game except for 2 is local time Sunday at 1 o'clock. But if
Yeah.
Shador's playing in November and December, Ty, that's changing. Mark my words.
You got that right. And you're right. I totally agree. Whether it's 2 wins, 5 wins, seven, it's how it looks, how it feels, how it smells, everything. Like, we'll see what happens. And if people want to check it out, Grant Delpit got into everything. Talk to Joe Thomas as well. That poor bastard, man. All the awful football he had to live through. He kind of looked back at like rock bottom when they were actively trying to lose. Because I can't imagine what it was like for a veteran to wake up in the morning to that alarm at 5 a.m. knowing your bosses want you to be terrible at your job. And he kind of chuckled and he's like, yeah, it's hard, but like all these young players, like they don't know any better. So they're looking at Deshaun Kaiser and Kevin Hogan thinking, oh man, we got all these All-Americans everywhere. We're going to be good. And they were terrible. So I like that the Browns aren't going to that extreme. And I like that they're not going to the other extreme. If you learn anything from Deshaun Watson, it's you can't just push a button, spend 230 mil guaranteed, give up all those picks and be good. You've got to
Mhm.
rebuild this thing from the inside out. They've got a shot to do it now. And that's good for the NFL, I think.
Yeah, you know, I was surprised but not stunned when there was no primetime games, right? Because like everybody's supposed to get a nibble at that, you know, and
Yeah.
like they play in the AFC North where all these games are fascinating, right? And of their 3 wins last year, 2 of them were at home against Pittsburgh and Baltimore, both of whom made the playoffs, right? When was that magical Thursday night
Right.
when the blizzard came in the third quarter and it got wild? So it says a lot about where they are and how they're viewed. And we'll see. I feel like this. I feel like they had to do what they had to do with Miles. They've done what they believe they need to do in some other cases, and they got to see things through. They've invested in David Njoku. They got him for 1 more year. They've got Batonio and Teller for 1 more year, and we'll see where that goes. It looks like the Jerry Judy trade was smart. He played a full year, and he really hit an extra gear. They're banking on some other guys who haven't done it or haven't done it consistently. And we'll see. If Joe Flacco's in the game, those receivers need to run every route out because he will chuck it deep now. Like he'll get you involved. And even if he throws a couple to the other team, you can still win. Right. So we'll see. The Judkins thing looms as really disappointing because Ty, that's a 200, 250 touch guy right away. They drafted him at number
Yeah, we've
36.
kind of been burying the lead here. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this was somebody they really wanted to run this offense through potentially.
Right. So they other teams viewed Travion Henderson ahead of him, right? And Ohio State did at times last season. But the Browns said, for what we want to do and what we need, this is our fit. And he was immediately going to be the short yardage guy, immediately going to be in the rotation. And whether that meant he was starting or getting 20 carries, we'll see. Maybe it wasn't going to be until October, November. But if he misses training camp, even if he's reinstated, even if this gets pled lesser or however it goes, like how are you going to have a rookie season? You just don't. Right. And now you got this lingering, and it's the second straight year that your second round pick had a domestic violence arrest before he ever played an NFL game. And you're trying to make your case for staying as a front office? Bad.
Yeah, and the NFL is going to run their own investigation
Right.
too. And
Right.
it'll
And
be
he doesn't
interesting.
have a contract. So it's probably unlikely that he never signs
That's
a
right. Does have a
contract.
contract?
Right. But right now it's right. 257 picks, 255 are signed as we record this. Shamar Stewart in Cincinnati and Quinshon Judkins in Cleveland. And he does, and right as of yesterday, there's no date for his pretrial or anything. So everybody's gathering information on this thing. I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I was married to one once. It didn't go that well, but we're sitting and waiting to see how that turns out. So maybe he'll be playing football in 2 weeks, but if he's not, every week that he misses, that is a huge hit to this team. And the fact that as long as there's even a little bit of a cloud following his football
Oh,
future, it's just hard to overcome that. And it's hard for this organization to overcome that. Last week, we're dealing with this, and they tweet happy birthday to Devin Bush. He's in court that day on an assault charge too. Like you got to stop with this shit. It has to stop.
I know. I get it. You have what 90 players, and it's hard to just make sure all 90 are behaving. But this is why you go through an extensive,
Correct.
exhaustive, painstaking,
Yes.
interrogating process. Like you really. you've got to ask these guys hard questions, and then you've got to ask everybody who knows them hard questions. And on the heels of Deshaun Watson, good Lord, if there's any truth to this, not a good look
Yeah.
for the
So the
Browns
one the
brass.
one thing that's been consistent is their drafting is they draft super young guys, super young, super athletic guys thinking they'll develop and that they'll get their second contracts at a certain, but it's led to having a very immature team. It really has. And they've ignored some red flags. Now, I don't know that there were any with Judkins. There certainly weren't any in my pre-draft research. I don't do it as extensively, right? But we knew they were taking a running back. We knew they were moving on from Nick Chubb. And that's what hurts the fan base too, is the fan base did not want them to move on from Nick Chubb, even though the reality said it was time for Nick Chubb and the Browns to separate. And so Nick Chubb signs with Houston, and 2 weeks later, the guy can't be at camp because he's accused of doing this, right?
Man.
And like obviously we're trying to figure out all this information of what really went on or what's going to go on next. That it's not a good vibe. It's not a good vibe whatsoever.
And I know some folks listening are probably thinking, okay, what did Bob McGinn glean from the scouts? And I just pulled that up while you were talking. And I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons with Quinshon Junkins, the player, but nothing personality wise at all from the scouts, anyways. So I don't know. It's tough business, but this is why you really got to dig, I
Yeah.
suppose, and not what the
Well, they
Browns
used to
want to
say,
start.
they used to say our motto is smart, tough, accountable, right? Like that's what's a Cleveland Brown, smart, tough, accountable. Well, about the time of the Watson trade, we didn't hear that really often anymore.
Is that right?
Yeah. The only time we hear it is when
So
I tweet about it.
that's kind of the beauty of being able to just move on from Deshaun Watson, the player. I feel like we can think about the Cleveland Browns in a different light, but you're still kind of stuck with them like that. You still have to pay out that money, and you can move it around as much as you want. And obviously, they have an owner that will spend, but that cloud isn't completely gone. So then, when something like this pops up, it's like, ugh, God, like the vibes do matter this time of year.
I did. I agree. I agree. Like the Minnesota practices were so bad last year that the vibe was just yuck, right? And like the timing of this, like training camp's supposed to be about selling hope, right? You're getting your fan base excited about the battle for the sixth receiver spot and the seventh linebacker spot, right? You're playing preseason with your own broadcast crew, and they're talking about how much the coaches have devoted and how happy the players are to be there every morning, and how everybody's bringing the juice, and how this player from Weber State and this player from Northern Arizona are bringing it, and your first round pick looks great, right? That's what training camp is supposed to be about. Everybody's
Hmm.
0-0, and you celebrate the shit out of it. Not here. Well, we'll see. I mean, the way the schedule is structured, Ty, the compound, the facility is under construction, and they're going away for these joint practices. So the only
Oh,
ones
that's
open to the
interesting.
public are the first 2 weeks. All 8 open to the public are the first 2 weeks. So Shador Mania is going to be running wild. I mean,
Yeah.
the 12 jerseys are going to be there, the chants, the everything. So it's going to be interesting to see that, and then there will be people in, and it has to be open to the media by rule, even if it's not open. But you're going to be looking at crowds of 4,000 people barking and celebrating and doing Super Bowl chants like you have every year, and then that's going to go away, and we'll see when you get in because that includes probably the first 4 practices, which are no pads, no contact, no anything. This just kind of jogging through, getting acclimated, and then after that first 4, that's always when the shift is who's earning more reps. We're charting these quarterback reps. Who had a good day? Can you stack it with another one? Who had 2 bad days in a row? Do we see Shador move up? Do we see Dylan Gabriel move up? Because the lingering thing, and it makes sense, is Flacco's always going to get the fewest reps early because he doesn't need them because he's seen everything in this league. But if he's your guy, he's got to get the quality reps. He's got to be in there with Jerry Jeudy and David Njoku in the first O line. So
Totally.
last year Watson didn't play in the preseason at all. Those joint practices against Minnesota, as I mentioned, were miserable. And I'm just interested to see both from a procedural and obviously an execution standpoint how this summer might be different.
Yeah, because usually you'd look at a training camp battle, and a weekend you kind of know who's going to win it because there's only so many practices in the new CBA. But every snap really does matter at the quarterback position for the Browns. I think they legitimately are going to let this play out, let them compete, and make a decision as late as
Yeah.
they possibly can, which adds
No,
to the intrigue as far as
and
you're
in that
concerned.
preseason game, like they better be going for it on fourth down and all that stuff, right? Like
Oh yeah,
play. You would like let's go. Let's play. Let's not run from it. Who cares what the result is, right? Get these guys as many chances as you can.
Zach Jackson, the Athletic. Zach Jackson and Friends is the name of the pod,
Zach Jackson and
correct?
friends. Yes, sir.
I love it. All right, make sure everybody you listen, you read, this is going to be fun as hell to follow. Thanks so much for hanging out with us here at Go Long, Zach.
All right, Ty, talk to you soon.